You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows like the one you're about to enjoy, visit electronicmediacollective.com. And now, our feature presentation.
Hello, welcome to the Middle Age Movie Reviews Podcast. Three guys singing, 1, 2, this podcast is coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your door. 5, 6, grab your chips and dip. 7, 8, we're gonna keep you up late. 9, 10, subscribe at the end.
My name is Tim, and my podcasting partners are Movie Matt,
Joey.
All right, Joey, why don't you tell us what we're watching tonight to help keep us up late into the evening?
Tonight we are watching the 1984 movie A Nightmare on Elm Street, number 741, from the book of 1001 Movies You Should Watch Before You Die, written by Wes Craven, directed by Wes Craven, and starring Heather Langenkemp, Johnny Depp, and Robert Englund in the role that made him an icon.
All right. Thank you, Joey. Well, gentlemen, I actually have 3 questions this evening for you tonight. The first 2 are actually connections. That's right. We're going to connect some movies together and some fun stuff here. So first, I'll ask you the question, Tim. You have exactly 30 seconds to answer the question, then it'll go to Joey. All right. Are you ready?
Sure.
What do these 2 movies have in common with our film tonight? Missing in Action and Night of the Comet.
Missing in Action and Night of the Comet? No clue. Pass to Joey.
All right, Joey.
They're both from the 80s. That's one.
True, they are both from the 80s. That's not the answer I'm looking for.
Sorry.
They one at least Night of the Comet's got awesome stonewashed jeans in it, like this movie does. And big hair.
15 more seconds. 10.
Chuck Norris had sex with everyone in the cast.
What? Nope, I am sorry. That is incorrect. The correct answer is all 3 movies were released on November 16th, 1984.
All right.
Wow, I'm guessing Nightmare on Elm Street, at least in the second week, probably fucking ruled.
Well, Missing in Action was number 1 that weekend, and then Night of the Comet was number 3. So
really,
so
Night of the Comet
was number 2.
Yeah, Night of the Comet was number 3. All right, next one. All right, Joey, you get 30 seconds to answer this question, then it'll go to Tim. What do these 3 TV shows have in common with Nightmare on Elm Street? Laverne and Shirley and Welcome Back, Kotter.
I thought you said 3 TV shows.
It's 2 TV shows and this movie. Sorry.
Holy shit, this is hard. I don't think Robert Englund was ever in Welcome Back, Kotter. Oh, Laverne and Shirley? Henry Winkler was in movies directed by Wes Craven.
5 seconds.
And
time. Final answer, Joey.
Tom Hanks does karate in all 3 shows.
No, I'm sorry.
Damn.
All right, Sam, to you. What do these 2 movies have these 2 TV shows have in common with Nightmare on Elm Street? Laverne and Shirley, Welcome Back, Kotter.
Mr. Kotter and one of the other cast members and Freddie all wear sweaters?
Well,
I'm willing to guess there's sweaters. There's sweaters in all 3 fucking shows.
Nailed it.
Technically, that's true, but that's not the answer I'm looking for. The exact answer is actually Charles Fleischer plays Dr. King at the Sleep Center. He also played Carvelletti in Welcome Back, Kotter, and he played Chuck in Laverne and Shirley. He's also well known for playing voice of Roger Rabbit in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and he was also the mechanic in Back to the Future Part 2.
But he wasn't the mechanic in The Mechanic.
No, he was not.
That's like saying, like, hey, there's an extra in A Nightmare on Elm Street that was in like 2 episodes of Perry Mason. It's like, a fucking course they were.
Well, okay, so
Yeah, I think
that guy played a
Carver
perp
was
on
in at
Hill
least
Street
a full
Blues.
season. A full season of Welcome Back, Kotter. And Chuck was in at least 6 episodes of Laverne and Shirley.
But
Okay,
I
that's
bet
significant.
sweaters were in a whole lot more.
Yeah, and they had a fucking L and an S on them for Laverne and Shirley. It's in the intro, I think.
And Freddie Kruger has F and a K in his.
All right, gentlemen.
Yeah, you got to look under the brim next to his sweat stains. He's got his name in it.
I'm pretty sure our Horseshack probably had his initials in his underwear.
There you go.
All right. Well, I'll ask you an easier question then. So, Joey, when was the first time you saw Nightmare on Elm Street?
On television, edited for TV. And I wouldn't see an unedited, rated R cut of any of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies until part 2, when my family had rented a VCR from the grocery store. Yes, that was a thing. And a big pile of tapes, and my brother and sister, and one of them had like somebody sleeping over. All were watching the scary movie, and then I snuck in. Wasn't supposed to be watching it, and it scared the fuck out of me. Way scarier than the first one on TV, completely edited, but that still kind of spooked me out too. I remember watching it on a TV all alone in the kitchen of all places, where we had a little TV, and then just sitting in like a, dig into your ass wooden chair on the edge of my seat, literally, because the TV was small. You sat close to it, and just kind of like learning the lore that I missed out on, when I saw the second movie. I don't remember which one I saw first, but I know that I saw Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, completely uncut. And those special effects looked way more real on shitty VHS. But I definitely saw the first movie on good old TV. It might have been Channel 32, WFLD. Sometime around the Halloween season, I'm sure.
Nice call letters. Speaking of call letters, did you know that the call letters on the TV in the movie was KRGR for Kruger?
I did not know that.
Yeah. All right, Tim, how about you? When was the first time you got spooked by Mr. Kruger?
As we all know, was not and only have recently become a somewhat fan of the horror genre. So back in the day, not at all. So I'm guessing when I seen this was probably at probably a sleepover at a friend's house or something. Probably hang out with a couple of my buddies, and we rented this. And they, a lot of my friends were horror aficionados, but even back then. So I'm sure I had to sit down and watch it then. And to my surprise, I actually did enjoy it. I thought it had a pretty interesting plot. It wasn't anything like I was expecting. I was just expecting a hack and slash, blood fest, and it was a lot more than that. So I guess to put it bluntly, I actually enjoyed this one the first time I seen it, surprisingly. And then I probably have only watched it a couple times since then. This is probably maybe my 4th or 5th viewing of it, but still enjoy it. Still like the premise of it. Enjoy the plot a lot. I think it's a very well thought out horror film. And it's not just like, let's just see how many bodies we can stack for shock effect. So yeah, VHS, friend's house.
Nice. Well, I think I'm kind of in the same boat with you guys. So the first time that I seen this movie, it was one of those times we were over at my uncle's house. My uncle had HBO, and the parents were playing poker in the kitchen while the kids were watching HBO movies on TV. And we missed like the first 5 minutes of the movie. And so we ended up watching. I remember my uncle coming in saying, "Kids, this is all fake. Don't be afraid." And I was like, "No, I'm not afraid." I wasn't really scared about it. And at the time I was like 8 or 9. And I kind of thought the effects definitely look different on a standard quality versus the nicer quality we have of HD. But yeah, I remember watching this at my uncle's house going, yeah, I'm not really scared. I'm not scared of this. No, not at all. No, I don't have nightmares of someone in my dreams chasing me down a boiler and hacking me up with claws of hands. That was a blatant ripoff of my favorite Marvel character, Wolverine. And no way does this at all affect my childhood and the fact that I have been tortured and tormented in dreams since then. So yeah.
So you're saying the third act, the final scenes of Who Framed Roger Rabbit were scarier than this movie?
I would.
By the
think
way,
so.
the guy you mentioned was the voice of Roger Rabbit. I
Yes,
just figured that out. So the doctor checking out Nancy is Roger Rabbit.
Yes, the doctor checking out Nancy is Roger Rabbit. Okay, Tim. Well, as our resident master of puppets, what are you going to lay down on me for the synopsis tonight?
Well, since Freddie doesn't have a lot of lines yet in this film, as I believe he does in future editions of this franchise, I think tonight I would like you to read it as a teen desperate to convince their parents that someone is trying to kill them in their sleep.
All right. Going back to teens, huh? Let's see here. Let's see if I can channel my... Let me think about all those times that my mother forgot me at school when she was supposed to pick me up, and I was trying to desperately convince her that she had to pick me up that day instead of going to her... Sorry, I have some repressed memories here. All right. Are you not listening to me? I'm telling you, someone on Elm Street has killed Tina and is trying to kill me, Nancy, Rod, and Glenn in our sleep. At first, I was not sure who was tormenting us. He just appeared in our dreams in his red and green sweater, grinning at us with his burnt, disfigured face, tormenting us. But the sound of his glove nail-like knife fingers as he scraped it against things. I just can't get the sound out of my head. Please don't look at me like that. I'm telling you the truth. I can prove it. I pulled his hat from my nightmare. Look, this is real, and it has his name in it. Fred Kruger. What do you mean? That is impossible. If you don't help us, he is going to continue to pick us off one by one, just like the Predator in that movie that comes out several years later. I know you don't believe nightmares are real, but you are wrong. Dead wrong.
Nicely done, man. Nicely done.
Oh, I'd like to thank the Academy. All right, gentlemen. Well, that pretty much, sums up the entire movie there. But let's go ahead and dive into this movie. Let's take a minute or two to just kind of go through the scene and look at what Fred Krueger is doing to these children on Elm Street. So we start off by seeing the teenager Tina Gray awaken from a terrifying nightmare in which a disfigured man wearing a bladed glove attacks her in a boiler room. Her mother points out the mysterious slashes on her nightgown, and the following morning, Tina's best friend Nancy Thompson and Nancy's boyfriend Glenn Lance divulged that they too experienced some nightmares about the same disfigured man. So, of course, this is the first time that we see Freddie Krueger, and we see I would almost say, independent film quality of effects for this. And I think it was pretty clever the way Wes Craven shot this, kind of channeling Steven Spielberg by not really showing the bad guy right off the bat. What did you think of this opening sequence, Tim?
I love the beginning of this film. I mean, first off, to even back it up just before the character's introduced, as the credits roll, we get to see the making of the infamous glove. Which I was like, when you first see it, you're like, what the hell's going on here? It seems like something that maybe should have been later on in the movie, maybe during an explanation or something like that. But they start the whole film off with you seeing just this like forging of the iconic weapon that's about to be used in this film. And it's cool as hell. It's like nothing you've ever seen. And I think it just draws you in right away because you're like, what the hell is going on? Why is this being made? And what is this going to have to do with anything? So you're totally fixated on that. And then instead of, starting off like any other film that we'd see where there'd be like an introduction to the kids at school, or you'd see the bad guy right away or something like that, you get dropped into Tina Gray's dream, but you don't really see, like you point out, you don't really see the villain. Like it's more of a, there's a dream going on, it's scaring the hell out of her, but it's done in such a way that it doesn't give the whole thing away. So now you've got this image at the beginning of this glove. You kind of understand it's going to have something to do with the baddie in the film, but you don't really know what he looks like or what he's going to do. And then she comes out of the dream and you're like, oh, okay. That kind of explains what I've been watching now, the strangeness of this opening. So I thought it was really clever to start it off actually in the dream state right off the bat. It was a nice fresh start that you don't see in a lot of films, like starting off in a dream state. Usually, again, like I said, you're usually introduced to the characters in other ways, them going to school, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. So I thought it was really, really cool the way they started it, for sure.
I do have to say I agree with you. I think it was neat to start off right in a nightmare. And of course, the movie is called Nightmare on Elm Street, so you'd assume that they wanted to like connect it right away to the whole supernatural aspect of the murderer. And I do like how you mentioned, I did kind of gloss over it, the whole fabricating of the glove. And I don't think it's until like maybe the fifth or sixth movie that you learn that there was another glove made. So you kind of get the idea that, oh, hey, this was he made this before he died, kind of thing. Because when I first saw it, I always thought that he was making it in the dream, because it kind of like segues from that to him hunting down Tina. But enough of my thoughts on this. Joey, what did you think of the opening sequence of Nightmare on Elm Street?
Well, watching it in high definition and having already, having all these memories of seeing him build the glove, I was starting to pay attention to other things, such as what's with all this shit on this table? There was like bottles. There's a pair of fucking glasses. I was like, Freddie Kruger doesn't have glasses. Where did all this shit come from? So there's a lot of random shit on that fucking dream table. So I don't know. The prop people are like, I don't know, throw some fucking junk on the table. Make it look like a shithole. I was just like, all right. But we're meant to focus on the building of the glove, but it's like, you go back and you notice things. So I liked it. I thought it was scary when I was a kid. Seeing him, build the knife finger glove, but as an adult, I don't find the glove very scary.
Gotcha. You don't like the fact that the steak knife was turned into a finger?
I think that was awesome. And the irony is I think on his glove, like if you took a curved steak knife, it'd be the rounded top the way his glove is. That's going to be the sharp side. The point's sharp, and then the underneath part where he's slashing people, that would be the dull part.
Actually, I looked it up because I was really curious, because I kind of thought the same thing, Joey. It's actually a very special knife. It's made by Case. It's like the Case P210, and it's like a tomato knife. So it actually has
it's like a fillet knife.
Yeah, so it's like a half fillet, half like fruit paring knife. So it actually is curved with the blade underneath like that, which accommodates nicely to this glove weapon. When you see, I guess they don't make them anymore. Because as soon as I figured that out, I'm like, I'm going to order me 4 of these things and go make one of these. No, not so much. They're not easy to come by anymore. I'm sure every Freddie Kruger fan out there has, bought them up and tried to build their own. But it's super cool. Originally, I guess he wanted to use fillet knives, but that would have been much more pointy, and then it would have curved outward like a normal knife instead of curving inward like the ones that we see.
Well, ask Matt. If you have a real pair of metal claws, you got to be really fucking careful of them. Because even if they're not sharpened, you could hurt somebody. They're pointy.
Yes.
And they're metal.
Yes, they are pointy. They are metal. They need special little tips that you put on each little individual blade as you put it on your wall to display.
How much did those expensive ass Wolverine claws that you have cost?
I don't know, because my brother-in-law bought them for me as a Christmas present.
That's a good brother-in-law.
Those were custom made. Those weren't official, right?
No, they were not official.
Yeah, because I saw some official ones that were almost the same size. They looked metal, but they were in fact like some sort of plastic.
Right.
And if they had been on sale and it was at Spirit Halloween, after Halloween, I would have bought them for you because I was like, you got kids, you need to get rid of those sharp fucking blades.
Well,
But,
I have them up someplace high where they can't touch them.
oh, so they'll have more force when they fall.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It's a great fucking idea.
Yeah. Kids that get curious and impale themselves don't tell tales. But I don't. I think the idea of that weapon, that gloved weapon, is ridiculous when you think about it. But it's so cool. And what are you going to do? I mean, we've already, we've got the knife with Michael Myers. We got the machete with, out there with Jason Voorhees. What are you going to give Freddie Kruger that's going to stand out? Like, I think originally he was thinking about giving him a sickle, but I mean, that's a weird, unwieldy weapon to be carrying around all the time. I mean, it was a stroke of brilliance to create this weird gloved weapon. It just, I mean, again, practical? No. Probably going to stab yourself with it? Surely you're going to along the way, but, and he does. I guess he kind of cuts himself for effect as he goes along, but it's just so cool. It became so, instantly iconic. It was really a brilliant move.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go to a Halloween haunted house without somebody dressed up as Freddy Krueger, because he's become a pop culture icon because of this movie and the entire franchise. So yeah,
hell, 2 out of 3 of us own him. Joey has one. I have one. You're the only one that doesn't, Matt. Get with the program. Get rid of them damn X-Men claws. Go get yourself a Freddy Krueger glove.
You get some safe plastic claws in your house,
Yeah.
mister.
Yes.
You have children.
Yes.
all right. Maybe I'll just make some with a 3D printer we have. Anyway, back to the movie. So during a sleepover at Tina's house, Tina's boyfriend, Rod Lane, arrives, and they have intimate relations.
Hot Rod.
When Tina falls asleep, she dreams of the disfigured man attacking her, while Rod witnesses her being fatally slashed by an unseen force, causing him to flee. Nancy and Glenn find Tina's bloody corpse. The next day, Nancy's policeman father, Don Thompson, arrests Rod despite his pleas of innocence. At school, Nancy falls asleep in class and dreams of the man chasing her in the boiler room. She deliberately burns her arm on a pipe, which startles her awake in class and leaves a burn mark on her forearm. Ooh, Chekhov's burn mark. All right, gentlemen, so that's a lot to cover in this first act, and I think the biggest thing we should probably talk about is, of course, Tina's dream and her attack. I think this whole sequence was probably what is best known in one of two things best known in this movie with Freddy's attack on the teenagers, because the way that they shot this. And I think I'm going to go over to you first, Joey, if you want to tell our audience a little bit about how they came up with this scene with Tina being basically thrown all over the ceiling and on the walls.
I want to say it was Fred Astaire.
No,
seriously. Like, it was. Which movie was it where they originally had a rotating room where he starts walking on the ceiling long before Lionel Richie did it? Is it Singing in the Rain?
Singing in the Rain with Gene Kelly.
Maybe it's Danny Kaye. Let me see.
I don't think it's Danny Kaye. I think you were right. I think it is Fred Astaire.
On the Wall movie. Dancing on the Ceiling, Fred Astaire. Yeah, I was correct.
Yeah.
It's from the movie Royal Wedding in 1951. So they are actually, we're 30 years later, and they're I don't know if it's the same people involved. They may have actually consulted somebody who got Fred Astaire to, in this rotating room where he, dances all over the room, and then the camera stays fixated. So it looks like, he's walking on the ceiling when in fact the whole room's rotating. And you had the fixed camera. So I think they were involved with it. I don't remember off the top of my head. I kind of confused the rotating room, like behind the scenes stuff, with the behind the scenes stuff on keeping the room cold for The Exorcist. It's like it's all jumbled up in my middle-aged brain. So instead of having a lot of refrigerant, in this movie, they rotated the room. I want to say that it's been done again in like some music videos and stuff that are more recent, but it's all kind of based on the same thing. I don't remember. I didn't get to watch the remake. I know that they did it maybe a different way in the remake. I could tell you what sucks ass in the remake is Freddie kind of like pushing through the wall in CG. That's dog shit compared to that, having just Robert Englund rub his face up against, a pull taut screen that's meant to be, the wall. That was way more fucking effective.
I think that was like a spandex wall. He's just pushing through like spandex.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They just lit it in such a way, or it had the right texture that it's like, oh, it looks like the fucking wall.
Clearly, that's sheetrock. I can tell that's sheetrock.
Right. Joey, on that room too, they had such a low budget on this. I think they had to actually have guys stand outside and manually turn this thing. I don't think they even had it automated. I think they made it.
I don't recall.
If I remember right.
It was probably the most sophisticated thing in the film.
I think you're right, Tim. I think it was manually operated because they had such a low budget. I do recall seeing special behind the scenes footage of them.
Yeah,
which it's relatively short.
Yeah, well,
it's not as long as you think.
And that little bit of factoid's gonna lend to a scene later on as to explain why it kind of ended up the way it did. But we'll cover that when we get to it.
Yeah.
The big difference with Fred Astaire was that in this movie, like, you had the perspective of Rod sitting in the corner next to the camera. We're at an off angle instead of looking at the room head on. And so because he's kind of like strapped in, so to speak, as well as the camera, that's giving you, like, you're kind of like the audience's perspective. You're right over Rod's shoulder looking up. So it gives it even more of a creepy vibe that she's, getting pulled, along the wall and then the ceiling. Whereas with the Fred Astaire thing, again, like, you're literally facing forward at the box, like you're watching a play.
Right.
So this was it gave you another, by giving you that other perspective, it kind of fucked with your head a little bit when you look at it. Like, it doesn't make sense how they did it. Whereas with the Fred Astaire thing, like, somebody tells you, it's like, oh, they rotated the room. They're like, oh. With this, you're like, how the fuck did they do that?
Right.
The forced perspective of him being stationary, I think, helps sell it really well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely helps sell it.
What about you, Tim? Other than what you've already put in, is there any other comments you have for the rotating room and Tina getting, ripped up in the bedroom?
Yeah, I mean, one of my observations on this that I thought was kind of unique to this film versus other. I mean, anytime you watch other horror films and you got kids, it's either kids that are completely stranded without any adult supervision somehow. They've put themselves out in the forest, some weird cabin. I don't know. They're hiding in the shed with a bunch of chainsaws in an abandoned home, whatever, we've seen it. Or you have, there are the parents around and they're very concerned and they're trying to, help their kids or whatever. And there's usually siblings and stuff. I found this one to be unique because, one, every one of these kids could be a single child home, which is kind of odd if you think about it. Because if you think about most of your friends when you grow up, I mean, there were certain kids that was just, a single child home, but most of them had multiple kids. So, and then secondly, the parents in this are here and just don't give a shit. Like, I just, like, they are.
I would say that's only true
out.
Of what's our first victim's name? Elizabeth, the Weiss lady.
You mean Tina's mom?
Tina.
Yeah. Tina's mom's white trash.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so it's like she's like, oh, you got better trim them fingernails or stop having them dreams. Now I'm going to go have sex with this man who may or may not be your father.
Well, you also learn in the movie that Tina's mom took off to Mexico with her boyfriend.
Right.
So,
but you also, we've got...
that's why they were left home and she had the friends over.
Yeah.
But we never get to see that mom grieving, do we?
No, she's in
Vegas.
She's still in Mexico during the funeral.
She's in Vegas. Yeah, she's in Vegas or whatever.
Like
but I mean,
they can't reach her because she's fucked up on tequila.
But you've got Nancy, or the main character. I mean, her mom is obviously checked out and almost mannequin-like. And at first, you don't even know why. She's just. I was almost going to write it off as like she's the worst actor on the face of the planet. I mean, she's just. There's there's no emotion in that face, no range of acting, nothing. She's just makeuped up. Her hair is perfect, and she's almost like a mannequin that they just put down there, and they're just having somebody behind her talk like she's a real actress. And
There's
then
subtext, though.
Well, there is, and it comes later.
And it's that she's just trying to act like she's sober, but she's actually fucking drunk all the time.
Right, but at first you don't get that. But then you got the dad, who later we'll find out, like, they're obviously divorced or separated or whatever, and all he cares to do is just blame her for all the problems that are befalling his daughter. Like, well, where were you? Why'd you let this happen? Blah, blah, blah. And then you've got Glenn, who calls his mom to say, hey, I'm spending the night with the cousin or whatever, and he's playing that tape. And it's obvious once that tape keeps going, that it's like he's not really where he says he's going to go at. Any parent worth their grain of salt is going to figure that out real quick. You know, and they're just like, yeah, just go have a good time, whatever. I mean, you know, there's like car crash, some kinds of stuff going on in that
his
little
mom is
sound
dumb.
effects tape. Yeah, mom's just not paying attention because she don't care probably. And then Rod, we never even know. Like, that dude's just like spend the night. There's not even any pretense to pretend like he's trying to fake his parents out. He's just spending the night or whatever. So I don't know. I just feel like, you know, there's not a lot of parental involvement. And obviously we're going to know why a little later, I guess, to some degree, but it's still kind of interesting that they're there, but they're really all of them are checked out or don't care or just whatever, you know? And then, so that's, and these kids all being from, you know, single children home, they're huddling together due to these dreams. Like they're looking for solace amongst each other in this group because they're not getting any kind of support from their parents. So, you know, they're all having these nightmares. Let's all spend the night together. So, you know, I thought that, you know, it just kind of struck me that way. I think it's kind of an undertone there that's going on that if you're not really paying attention, and not that it's super important, but I still thought it was kind of interesting. And then, you know, so you get them all there. They're all going to spend the night together because, you know, and they're still kind of piecing together, like the two girls have each had a nightmare, but they haven't really totally compared notes yet. You know that Glenn's kind of had one and he ain't saying too much, and Rod's just in denial. He's just like, whatever, yeah, everybody has bad dreams, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And he even tries to mess with them when he comes over to meet them at their house, you know, first by kind of joking. He pulls up that gardening tool with the little claws on. He's like, oh, look, claws on. So he's kind of admitting to what he's seen, but he's not really saying what he's seen, but it's already, the premise is there, you know. And then him and Glenn get into a little bit. He pulls out that 1980s, you know, switchblade from the Edge Company. That I think that was one of those kit switchblades that you put together back in the 80s. So right. I owned one of those back in the day, so I know that they, you know, half the time it wouldn't even, like, you know, you'd hit the button, knife would come up and fall back into the, you know, back into the handle. But later on, I feel like that's going to be some damning evidence against him. But then, you know, they'll kind of hang out a little bit, and then of course you got to have the teenage sex scene. And what strikes me funny in that is that, you know, you've got Glenn and Nancy, who are obviously not going to have sex. And then you've kind of got Tina and Rod, who are going to have sex, and they go up. And unlike, you know, our Halloween sex scene, where it was like, you know, the shortest, fastest scene we've ever seen on the face of the planet, they're up there. Dude, if you close your eyes, you think you're listening to porn. I mean, they are just going at it. They're screaming and moaning and oh God, and all kinds of stuff going on.
Rod lived up to his name.
He did. Rod gave, you know, he's laying pipe. There's no doubt about it. He's laying some pipe up there, and Glenn's downstairs like, great, I'm not getting none. But I just, the contrast of those two movies, it just cracks me up when it comes to that.
I believe Johnny Depp's line was, morality sucks.
Yeah. And then we finally get to the murder scene. And yeah, I mean, not only is the room cool the way they rotate it, but man, it just is messed up. And then, you know, watching him freaking out about it and stuff. And it gets to the end, and the other two come back up. They're like, what's going on? He opens up the door like, what the fuck did you do? It's like, I didn't do nothing. There was somebody in the room, but he's not really articulating it well. And then he just like catapults out the window. He's gone. You know, it's just, it was very, very, very entertaining. It's just like, he's like, crap, I didn't touch her. Well, I mean, I touched her, but I didn't touch her like that. You know, it's just so, it was cool to watch, and then funny to see how he's trying to like articulate what just happened. Can't do it. And he just splits. So, it's a cool scene, but yeah, it's just, there's a lot going on there. It's kind of funny in its own way, I guess.
Oh yeah. So just to back up a little bit about talking about the moms. So would you say who's a better mom, Tina's mom or Dee Wallace from E.T.?
Oh, well, I don't know. Do you let those kids go out too? We talked about that a little bit. Like, who lets their kids grab a bunch of steak knives and run out to,
exactly
something in the yard?
I'm thinking. So filmmakers had a particular idea of what parenting was like in the 80s, because between Dee Wallace not caring about these kids running outside to confront E.T. with steak knives, to parents basically running off to Las Vegas with their boyfriends, it's like, yeah, they had a certain type they were going for in these movies back in the 80s. And we're middle-aged guys. We grew up in the 80s and the 90s. I think we kind of seen a little bit of what parenting was like. Anyone see any similarities between some of this?
We were latchkey kids. You're absolutely right on that. I mean, we were all going home, letting ourselves in, and it'd be 2 or 3 hours before the first parent would even come home. So, I mean, that was status quo. But I don't remember at what age my parents would leave to go on a vacation and leave me home by myself or something like that, or, leave overnight like that. That didn't happen, not
right.
at all. I mean,
I remember being old enough that they said, all right, fix yourself something to eat, but don't use the stove.
Yeah. That's why you had a microwave. Go use the microwave. Can't possibly hurt yourself. Well, I'll let you know, I blew the bottom of my microwave out.
Well, you're not supposed to put a spoon in the microwave.
No, dude. So
what'd you do?
I had a buddy of mine. We were over at his house, spent the night one night. He's like, hey, come here, check this out. First, we started off with, taking marshmallows, put toothpicks in it, melting marshmallow men in there. And he's like, now check this out. He went, got an egg and put it in there, hit the timer, boom, goes off like a grenade. Freaking hilarious, a lot of fun. Of course, you got to do some cleanup before the parents get home. So then I'm at my house. I got a buddy spending the night over. I'm like, hey, check this out. Go, I want to show you what, such and such showed me. This is awesome. You're going to love this. Put it in there, sit the microwave room. Boom, it blows up. We're like, we're laughing. So I open it up. The whole bottom of my microwave is blown out. Because most microwaves, when you look at them, are metal, right? They're, got metal all the way. Well, mine was one of the first ones. It had a glass bottom. So that egg blew the whole bottom of that glass out. I just remembered, like, oh, crap, when my parents get home, I'm dead. And my friend looked at me and goes, I want to go home now. I'm like, you can't leave. If you leave, I'm dead. I will not exist by tomorrow morning. You cannot leave.
That microwave was probably like $600 back then.
Oh, dude, it was like,
with inflation, it'd be like a $2,000 microwave.
Yeah. Needless to say, my dad was pissed for sure.
So if you learn any takeaway from this podcast is don't microwave an egg.
Yeah.
In modern microwaves, folks. Middle-aged movie reviews is not responsible for any damage to microwaves in the event of this episode.
Yeah, it makes a really cool sound, but the aftermath may not be what you want.
All right. Well, I had mentioned that Nancy burns her arm in the boiler room, which is kind of a foreshadowing as to what happens. It kind of helps set the lore in the entire series about the supernatural aspect to dreams and how dreams can affect the real world. And I just thought that was neat that we can see that whatever happens in the dream kind of happens in real life. I mean, outside of people getting killed in the wall or up a wall, but it is neat to learn that Nancy can do something in the dream and carry it forward into reality, which then leads us into our next part of the film. And that's, of course, Nancy visits Rod at the police station, where he describes Tina's death along with his own recent nightmares about the same man. And it's interesting that, like Tim had said earlier, they really didn't compare notes about what's going on. And it isn't until after Tina's death that Rod really kind of confesses as to what he was seeing in his dream. So at home, Nancy falls asleep in the bathtub and is nearly drowned by the man. Now, I'm going to put a little pin in the part of the story here. So as we know, this is an 80s film, and with everything, 80s tends to have a lot of TNA in their movies. And I have to say, I think this was maybe the only time we got to see Nancy in her full view. And
she was in her birthday suit, but like only in your imagination. She was in a swimsuit under the suds, soapy suds.
Right, but
it was all implied.
Then when she gets pulled into the water, though, you do see that she does not have a top on.
Oh, let me see this. I'm going to go back.
All right. So I thought about this movie, I'm like, Joey's going to be so sad because this girl's nothing but a tease. We see her in the tub, but we never get to see
probably a stunt actress, by the way, who's actually, got a woman's body.
I don't know, because you can see her face. I think
she's the only teenager in the cast. She's very young.
Actually, when they get pulled under, that is a stunt actress.
Okay. All right. Well, so, Nancy falls asleep in the bathtub and is nearly drowned by the man in her dreams. Not the man of her dreams, but the man in her dreams. She then relies on caffeine to stay awake and invites Glenn to watch over her as she sleeps. Now, I also am going to put another pin in it. And, we reviewed another movie from Wes Craven back during Halloween. And, of course, that's where we made some references to this movie. Tim, do you remember what you had mentioned about this particular scene and Scream?
Oh, yeah, for sure. In fact, I was already ready to bring it up and everything. And this is where we're going to get to see the infamous number 10 jersey on old Johnny Depp there. Although he doesn't fill it out or make it look nearly as good as Rose McGowan did.
Right. So, of course, in her nightmare, Nancy watches the man prepare to kill Rod in his cell, but he turns his attention towards her and attacks her. Nancy then wakes up with her alarm clock goes off, and she, of course, yells at Glenn for falling asleep, which I'm like, well, you really can't fault the guy. I mean, it's past midnight. He's a teenage boy. He gets tired. He's going to fall asleep.
Really?
But, of course...
Because I remember being a teenager, and I remember I could stay up all freaking night. Like, these are the sleepiest teenagers I've ever seen in my entire life, because you didn't even go to sleep till 2 or 3 o'clock when you were a teenager, and then you were up like 4 hours later and ready to charge, and then the next day.
Well, they are operating sleep deprived. I don't know.
I don't think Glenn is yet, though. Like, Glenn hasn't really had too many nightmares. He doesn't seem too worried about it. So,
good point. How about you, Joey? Any comments so far on this scene before we move forward? I know you're probably still looking at your copy of Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh yeah, I'm right at the bathtub scene now to verify if we see any naughty bits. Might have to buy the 4K after all. I was going to wait till it was a box set. But the God, yeah, Glenn's jersey, like showing off like his midriff. Yeah, it's just like the one she wears in Scream, except, it looks nice on a girl, and it looks, it looks like Johnny's got an alternate lifestyle, and he likes rainbows.
You know what? That was a thing in the 80s, Joey. They wore, like, midriff jerseys and stuff. Even the dudes did.
Yeah.
That was the 80s, dude. It was the 80s.
That looked fruity then.
I'm not saying
all he needed was a flat haircut.
Well, there you go. But I'm saying that was a thing. It was real.
Oh, fun fact! I just found out the other day, and I posted it on Facebook. Boy George guest starred in an episode of the A-Team, and yeah, that's the kind of nightwear I could see Boy George rocking.
Okay. Well, and to be fair too, Joey, I'm not sure you're going to want to really see Langenkemp naked, because I think it took them like 12 hours to film that bathtub scene. By the time she gets out of that tub, she's going to be
a prune.
She's going to be as wrinkly as an 80-year-old woman. I don't think it's going to be a treat for you. You might want to stop now. I'm just warning you. You got the 4K high def. View at your own risk.
Well, like I said, it's the sequence when she's actually pulled under, and you see her transported into the underwater realm of dreams, because she's trying to swim up, and you get a full, well, not a full frontal, but a top portion.
Yeah.
Fuck it, I'm sharing my screen. We're all going to watch this together right now.
Well, I mean, that scene was super cool, though, because, first they had a tub where they painted it black to make it look like it had a lot of depth. They filmed the top part where the hand comes up out of there, which I guess she said was one of her favorite scenes in the whole film. So, Heather's a little bit, she's a little bit crazy, a little bit wild. There you go. Joey's got it.
That's a nipple, but that's definitely not her.
That's definitely not her. So there you go. Joey got a little skin. Yeah. Call Mr. Skin, have him tag it.
I didn't realize that you could see the claw underwater.
Yeah.
Oh, that was ever so brief. All right. She's going back down.
Yeah.
She's struggling. Do we get a sequel to the titty?
No, that's it. You just get the one. You just get the one.
You saw like half a breast.
I wasn't really looking for it, but I'm glad mission accomplished for you. So,
Now, here's what I think is hilarious is, okay, so she gets out. She's obviously fully awake, but in order to get into the room, the mom grabs a clothes hanger, a wire clothes hanger.
We never see her straighten it out. Like, it's already straight.
Yeah, and then she uses
she jimmies that fucking like a pro.
We had one of those kind of locks in our bathroom, and you'd have to have a little metal thing that would pop it open. And when my kid was little, we kept one of those handy just in case he ever locked himself in the bathroom. He had to get in there in a hurry. So it wasn't a coat hanger like that. That was ridiculous. But he needs a fairly girthy paper clip that'll pop that thing usually. But we did keep one around just for emergency situations.
I love this the stay awake fast acting bottle that the prop department made.
Yeah.
Well,
and why does mom have those? So she can get sober for court?
Evidently, yeah.
So she can drink longer.
Yeah.
I think the other cool thing about that bathtub scene, too, is they actually built that whole bathroom over a pool. So when they pull her down all the way down and they shoot that, it's actually they're shooting it from inside a actual pool shot upwards. So into the actual bathtub that's sitting over the top of the pool. So I thought that was really cool. Like it's a very practical effect. I mean, other than it's intensive to build that little set over there, but man, did it pay off. Like they did some pretty clever things with such a small budget. And that's, I think one of them for sure was the bathtub scene.
Imagine the neighbors. They're like, look, I don't know what kind of fucking plumbers they hired, but look what they're doing with that bathtub. It's over his pool.
Yeah.
I love how they keep moving the TVs around in this show too. Like they're grabbing these CRTs and plopping them on top of themselves and then on top of like chairs and stuff like that. Like once you had a CRT where it was at, you didn't move them. Things are heavy and awkward. They're not easy to move or comfortable to lay on top of you. So,
and when it went out, you put the new TV on top of the old TV.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
you put a nice doily over that big furniture TV, and you put the new TV on top.
Well, yeah. Well, the original CRT TVs that we had from like when my grandparents bought one was back in the 50s, and it had pure mahogany wood wrapped around it. That thing did not move.
That's because eventually you were going to get it fixed when you could afford to.
True.
Someday
we're going to fix that TV.
Entertainment center.
We're going to go back.
Meantime,
we're going to go back from the 13-inch to the 25, living large in color.
Yeah.
But did you guys, other than a Jeff Foxworthy sketch, did you know anyone who did in fact turn their old broken furniture TV into a stand for their newer, smaller TV?
Yes, my grandmother.
We had one at the cabin.
Mine too.
At the cabin.
And an uncle.
Just threw it on top of the other one.
Both sides of the family. Mom's side, dad's side. Furniture TV, broken, newer TV on top.
Joey, you may be a redneck.
Only one of them lived on a farm.
They migrate.
It wasn't the uncle.
It was the uncle.
Oh, okay.
Grandma didn't live on a farm. Grandma put a beautiful doily over her old TV that was broken.
Right.
It was
probably
gorgeous.
Hand crocheted herself.
Grandma didn't live at a farm. They just sent her to the farm.
That's where all grandmas go.
All right. Well, we then see that, she grabs that pill bottle of caffeine pills out of the medicine cabinet that obviously her mom uses to, wake herself up after she's in her drunken stupor. And, as we found out, she invites Glenn over to watch her sleep, which just kind of sounds creepy. Then, of course, she wakes up, as I had said, and she decides to, probably the wee hours of the morning, if not late at night, she runs back to the police station and forces her way in to the police station with the desk sergeant so that she could see Rod. And she just happens to come in just as Rod is found hanging by the bed sheets as though he committed suicide. And what did you guys think of that whole sequence with Rod's death and the blanket that was probably shot in reverse? And I'm gonna throw it over to you first, Tim. What did you think of Rod's death?
First of all, I was just going to ask, does Nancy's dad ever sleep? I think that guy is like, he's on a permanent, 80s cocaine high from the old evidence locker there. Because that dude's like always awake, always everywhere. And I love how she comes
got
in.
all his dope from Evil Hans Island.
Right.
Which you remember?
There you go.
Yeah.
Enter the Dragon.
Yeah. And like, she shows up, she's like, what are you doing here? He goes, well, there's been crimes and murders in my town, and I don't like when that happens. So I don't rest until that happens. I don't know, dude. You got Rod in the other room. You found him with the world's weakest switchblade. Apparently, case closed. Why aren't you in bed? Like, and then she's trying to convince her dad, like, there's something bad going to happen. Just go down there and check. And he's just like, what? He just argues with this girl all the time instead of just like, look, just go show her that so she'll shut up and I can send her home. And he finally convinces them, and they go down there, and then we got the whole scene where he's hanging. Well, we get to see the scene before where Freddy's kind of like starts to strangle and pulls him up the last second. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a reverse. It looks a little clumsy by today's standards because you can kind of see where they reversed it and stuff like that. It's a little jerky, but I don't know. It moves the plot along. It's not the most unique murder at all. It's not that scary. I mean, I guess maybe a little bit with the blanket, but compared to some of the other things we've seen, pretty weak sauce in the realm of killings for Freddy. But it's just, I don't know, it's kind of a weird, clumsy scene all the way around, I think, but it does move the plot along.
Yeah. I honestly think that it doesn't fit Freddy's MO. It seems kind of odd in this movie where it's geared towards being a slasher, where he's going to use his gloves to like basically murder all these teenagers. It seemed odd in the storyline. How about you, Joey? What was your thoughts on Rod's death?
Okay, Freddy's dead. Not the sequel, just his state of being. He's dead, right?
Right.
So why does he need to frame Rod?
Good question.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So that doesn't make any goddamn sense. So, like, he could have killed Rod any fucking way he wanted. I don't know. Maybe just so, like, maybe he was afraid, like, everybody's going to pack up and fucking move out of town, which is, what they should all done, which is, head for the hills. But,
well, is Freddy's haunting localized, or could he haunt
allegedly,
anybody in their dreams?
According to Freddy's Dead, the sequel, not the state of being, Freddy's haunting is localized to Springwood, Ohio. Spoiler alert. They're in Ohio.
But how does Jason end up fighting him then? Does he just happen to take a vacation there?
No. Freddy resurrected Jason through his mind or from hell or something. And then Jason allegedly walked from Crystal Lake, New Jersey to Springwood, Ohio. And then later in that movie, after they've sedated Jason, they go on the shortest road trip ever, driving apparently as fast as they can in the night in a van with Jason all loaded up on God knows what stuck in his neck, all the way to Crystal Lake.
All right.
And it doesn't go sideways until they've arrived at Crystal Lake. and that's Freddy versus Jason.
All right. Cool. 2 movies. It's a twofer. It's a twofer tonight, everybody. You're welcome.
All right.
Well, the other thing with that whole death scene too is that, well, I don't know if, Freddy doesn't need to, as Joey points out, to frame him for any reason, but okay, he's got this glove, he likes to scrape it on things. Dude, there's bars, there's chains, there's cages, like you think he'd be like, all over the place, like mess with this kid for a while before he kills him somehow. Like you think he'd torment him for a good long time. And apparently nobody's going down there and checking on this kid, and you can scream. He never really screams, I guess, because he gets choked out. So, but
right.
But still, it's just like, yeah, I think he could have had a lot of fun. Maybe he could have pushed his body through there and then used it like a grater. That would have been a way cooler death or something. Like, let's get creative.
It's a screen test.
Like, They come out, it's like, oh my God, they killed him like he was Play-Doh, you know?
Oh, fuck. That would have been awesome.
Yeah.
What about in the sequel, or not the sequel, the remake, where I think, does the guy like fall out of bed having a nightmare?
Never seen the sequel.
And he breaks his
I
neck,
don't know.
right?
I didn't see the remake.
Yeah. Or I'm sorry, the remake. I've never seen it.
The remake actually shot in the Midwest, so they shot quite a bit of it in Indiana. And they shot this really cool sequence in this church that's been on those shows where like it's called like Life After People or whatever. They're like, oh, what will happen to a buildings? Let's look at this church that is in Gary, Indiana, that no one has kept up, and is all but the stonework has fallen in. And they went and shot a big like sequence there with the guy Jackie Earl Haley. Playing, the guy from the burn victim, realistic burn victim, Freddie, and It was like really creepy and stuff, and it was really awesome. And then they cut it out of the movie. You could see like a snippet of it in the behind the scenes, and then they shot this big party there for the like an opening sequence party was supposed to be bigger, and then they shot this stupid diner sequence and cut most of that party sequence that was inspired by Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. They cut it out of the movie. And we have never gotten a director's cut or raw footage, or deleted scenes or whatever of the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. But I think there were going to be parts of it that was going to make it a better movie, maybe. But I don't think it would have ever been as good as this one, just because it wasn't fucking original. But you know what they did change?
They made him a rapist.
That's correct. So they were going to make Freddie Kruger a guy who diddled kids, and New Line's like, I don't think you want to do that. How about if he just kills the kids, like in a nursery rhyme or in some spooky tale? And they're like, all right, he can kill kids, but he can't have sexual relations with them.
Well, I think
because
that
at the end of the day, murder charges are worse. But anyways, one of them's icky feelings, and one of them, I guess you could be like the big bad wolf and eat little piggies or kill fucking kids. So that's what they had in this movie. Then they were like, oh, let's make it more realistic for the remake and make him a diddler. And people found out it's like, well, you can't root for the bad guy when he's a diddler. Freddy eventually becomes this comical root for the bad guy slasher. Not necessarily in this movie, but like you can't root for a diddler. Nobody's doing that right now. Diddy's in prison. And he doesn't have a whole lot of people saying, I don't care how many people, he choked to death with baby oil, gave him pneumonia. So yeah, that's where we're at. So I like the fact that they kind of did the scary storybook version of Freddy where he's a child killer. We find out it's like, quote unquote, about 20 kids in the neighborhood. About.
Right.
That's a fucking high death count for like any serial killer. 20 fucking kids. Maybe she could have said over 20 kids were missing in the county. That would have made more sense. But like we gotta give the mom a little bit of like, we gotta grade her on a curve because she's drunk when she's saying this.
Wow, how long is Elm Street? I mean, come on. Like I'm thinking about the street I grew up on. I don't know if there's 20 kids on that whole street up and down it.
Yeah, there's 20 kids in the whole fucking neighborhood. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Was this over a long time period? Was it over 3 decades?
I grew up in a no-horse town, and I was lucky if there was 5 kids on my street.
Nightmare in Matt's porch.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, it's like if you didn't know one of the kids, you knew somebody who knew one of the kids. He killed half the fucking kids in town. But she does call him a filthy. She uses the word a filthy child killer, implying that he is pervy. But they never come out and say what was originally in the script.
Gotcha. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll take a short break here for commercials, and we'll come back to it because I gotta take a leak.
It's the one, the only, the Ginsu glove. That's right, a handy-dandy KitchenAid appliance used to cut anything you want in the kitchen. Anything from teenagers to French fries or barbecue pork. So check it out at GinsuKnifeGloveBlade.com. for a low, low price of $14.99 a month for the next 6 to 7 months. And hey, if you like this podcast, check out the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network.com, where you can get all cool podcasts that you would want to listen to.
Do you brew alcohol? Would you like to sponsor a podcast? We're three guys who like to drink and talk about movies. We'll be happy to get loaded on your brand of alcohol if you'll only support MAM. Yes, middle-aged movie reviews. We will be happy to inebriate ourselves as we educate the masses on all the good movie trivia there is to know. Your product placed here.
All right, folks. Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to that wonderful commercial break. And don't forget, you can get your own Ginsu glove for a low, low price of $14.99 a month in 3 monthly installments. Just dial 555-KRGR95. We are back and continuing through Nancy's journey through A Nightmare on Elm Street. At his funeral, at Rod's funeral, Nancy's parents grow worried when she describes her nightmares. Her mother, Marge, drives her to a sleep disorder clinic where, in a nightmare, Nancy grabs the man's fedora with the name Fred Kruger written in it and pulls it into the real world. Now, of course, this is where we learn about Dr. King, who has no speaking parts, but you might recognize him as the mechanic from Back to the Future 2, as well as the voice of Roger Rabbit, a.k.a. Charles Fleischer. Now, after barricading their house, Marge discloses to Nancy that Kruger was a child murderer who killed 20 children but was released on a technicality. He was then burned alive by the victims' parents in conjunction with other Elm Street residents who sought vigilante justice. So they weren't so much necessarily like Batman, but they did hunt them down. And a point for me for pointing out Batman in a non-Andreas episode.
Eat that, Andreas.
Boo! Shame on you. It wasn't worthy enough of a Batman reference. Anyhow, so there's an old saying that says, it goes, 2 men can keep a secret if one of them's dead. So how did this whole fucking angry mob of fucking people not spill the beans? Like nobody's like, I can't believe we let that guy on fire. Like, how did that not happen?
Right. How did, because clearly Marge was married to Nancy's...
Homer Simpson. Chief Wiggum.
Yeah.
Homer, you gotta set the whore!
But then, is that a subtext? Is that why maybe Marge and John separated?
Oh, I'm positive of that. I mean, let's face it, he's the law, and all these townspeople decided they were going to take the law into their own hands. So, I mean,
they burned groundskeeper Willie to death.
Yeah. I mean, they're all guilty of it. I guess it's one of those. I think the reason they were able to keep it a secret is because if any one of them opens their mouths, they're all going to go down. And he's got to keep it a secret because one, he's trying to protect his wife, because if he's now a party to it, at least, if he wasn't actual participant, he is now
an accessory.
He is an accessory because he has kept it to himself. So he's guilty by association. And if he rats out his wife or anybody else rats anybody else out, then his daughter is going to be a ward of the state, at the worst, and maybe go to a relative or something. I don't know. But, so it's all in everybody's best interest to just keep their damn mouths shut. They all know what they did. And let's face it, they're all, I think that's part of what keeps everybody, kind of not estranged from their children, but just distant, because they're all carrying a heavy amount of guilt. I mean, one, apparently they've all lost children, because my understanding is there's a missing scene in here where they talk about, and it's on, I think originally it was on the Laserdisc or whatever. It's a deleted scene where they talk about all these kids had siblings, like every one of them.
Yeah, didn't she have like a brother or sister? Like she didn't know about that, or was that in the remake?
I have not seen. No, it's a deleted scene. My understanding that was on the Laserdisc. I've never seen it, but I read about it, and supposedly they tell all these kids like you all had siblings. So all these parents are shell shocked because they've all lost a child, and they want to protect their children, which also lends to them keeping their mouths shut. So, and I think this was a missed opportunity because I think they could have fleshed this out a little bit. I think they should have left that scene in because I think it's important. I think it's important for them. It now explains why the parents are kind of shell shocked, withdrawn from their own kids now, alcoholics, all that kind of stuff, and just generally angry, like the dad is, the police officer.
We all covered it up. You all had siblings we never told you about. We also covered up a murder. We burned a guy to death. It wasn't just murder. It was also arson. Both of them. There's no statute of limitations.
Right.
Oh, and also we had a record number of fucking kids getting murdered in our town. It was all the same guy. Does it sound like this story sucks yet?
But they could have filmed it like she could have been telling her about the whole scenario. They could have shown Kruger making the glove and kind of doing like a little montage on top of her explanation and showing him kidnapping and grabbing kids or whatever, and the parents mobbing up and grabbing him and whipping him into the furnace. Like, I think that would have
that's why you gotta watch Freddy's Nightmares. They actually, Tobe Hooper of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre fame and Poltergeist directed the episode where you get to see Freddy's origin, and you see the trial, and it gets thrown out because they didn't read him his Miranda rights.
Right.
So they're like, I know you killed 20 kids, but I forgot to say some words on a piece of paper, and so you just go free. Go out there into the world and diddle and murder and do what you do. And wait a second, you drive an ice cream truck? I thought you were a janitor in a boiler room. Oh, well. We are Freddy's Nightmares, and we're fucking around with continuity.
Right.
Watch the episode. It's fun.
Gotcha. Well, the one thing that kind of threw me off, and I don't understand why she had it, but why did Marge have Freddy's glove hidden inside an old-time boiler? An old-time furnace.
It's a fucking murder weapon, or at least it was a torture weapon. Isn't that evidence?
Yeah.
Or did he make that after? And they're like, there he is. He's making another instrument of awfulness. Let's burn him. And he's like, I just made my glove and I didn't get to use it yet. And they're like, fucking burn him. Hey, give me that glove. It looks pretty fucking cool. I want to keep it.
Yeah, I mean, who keeps a souvenir?
Because that seems like, kind of goes with the theme.
Well, and then so I'm going to reference the TV series Supernatural just because I've been watching a lot of it lately. But for the supernatural element of this, wouldn't Freddy be tied to that glove then, his ghost aspect, and wouldn't Nancy have been like the first one to be murdered?
Or we could have taken another direction, and it could have been, instead of him being tied to the glove, here, you need to take this glove because it's the only thing you'll be able to defend yourself in the dream because it's the only thing that can affect him.
There you go.
So she could have had glove on glove fighting. It could have been like a cat fight. Yeah, I mean, who keeps a souvenir of their mob justice?
He's got one glove. Maybe that was the glove that went on the other hand.
Oh, he was like the original Wolverine.
She stole one of them.
No, he was Edward Scissorhands.
Oh. And then Johnny Depp got it after he was pulled into his death.
There you go.
Freddie Butterfingers. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm going to make everybody sandwiches with my. I'm going to spread the peanut butter around. And
is Edward Scissorhands the true child of Freddie Kruger?
I don't know.
I think there's a sequel here. I think it's the unknown sequel to the Freddie. It's Freddie 1.5. Freddie Scissorhands.
Hands a real porn parody?
It
was.
All right. Well, anyway, so yeah, it definitely, there's some holes in the plot, and it definitely brings up questions.
But do you agree though? Hang on, Matt. Do you agree though? Instead of showing the damn glove, wouldn't it have been better for them to kind of show him making it in like a montage sequence? It would have made way more sense.
Yeah, because that falls underneath the whole show and not tell, or just show it with a voiceover. That would have been more entertaining, I honestly think. And then
I
we
got a
would have
fun
been
fact
able,
for you guys.
we would have been able to see Robert Englund without the makeup then too. That would have been pretty neat.
Like
All
I
right,
said,
Joey,
you got to watch. You got to watch Freddy's Nightmares.
Okay.
No, we'd have just seen him.
Anywho.
We'd have just seen Robert Englund and be like, "Isn't that the dude from V?
Yeah,
He eats rats."
it's the mouse guy. Actually, that was a different actor. I think that did Mousy. Here, Mousy. I think that was a different guy.
All right, Joey. So what's your fun fact?
Anywho, so in 1983, during Motown's 25th anniversary special, Michael Jackson first wore his famous crystal-encrusted glove. Yep, it was just one glove. And he was also wearing a fedora. In 1984, this movie came out with one glove and a fedora. A filthy child killer and a filthy king of pop. Discuss.
Maybe the jeweled glove originally had blades on it, and that's why he's all like, because he cut himself trying to take a piss.
Oh man. We are so gonna. Maybe we'll actually get letters about this. I don't know.
Was it wrong? Should I not have done that, Bubbles?
Here, let me diddle you with my crystal encrusted glove. Michael, that hurts. Stop it.
You're just being
All right.
silly. You're just being silly.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we crossed a line at all tonight, feel free to email us at mamreviewspodcast@gmail.com. It's
You're welcome.
mamreviewpodcast@gmail.com.
You're welcome.
And if you
let me
Let me stare at your butthole, Billy.
if you have any hate mail for us, feel free to write it to Joey, care of mamreviewpodcast@gmail.com, and he'll be happy to answer any hate mail you have for this show. Hell, that's if anybody's listening to this episode. Anyway, so Nancy, she realizes that Kruger's targeting her friends because her parents were horrible people and they were accomplices to his homicide. Later that night, Glenn falls asleep and is killed by Kruger. So Glenn, young Johnny Depp, who makes his film debut in this movie, is thoroughly eviscerated in a spewing blood pool of a scene, which is probably the second most known scene in this movie, and that's this river of blood. It doesn't come out of an elevator; it just gets shot up out of this bed. Tim, can you tell us how did they do that?
I can tell you how. Gravity.
Yes, gravity indeed. Basically, I believe they just used that same room that they used for the first scene, and they redressed it all up as his bedroom, and they did the same thing. And they put the cameraman in the middle, and they moved that room around. But I think the interesting part is that when they went to do the blood, they had that thing turned upside down. And they poured that blood in through, the top, and they're pouring that blood down to make it look like, it's coming out of the bed and shooting onto the ceiling. And the poor bastard who's actually got all this blood, because they didn't use normal, like the what is that?
Corn syrup.
Corn syrup. Yeah, I can't remember the name of this corn syrup is. But basically, they couldn't get, that's too goopy, so they actually just use like red colored water. The guy's like pouring that down through the hole, and it starts hitting the electrical in the room. It starts electrocuting him. And so he's like getting electrocuted up there, and the guys are trying to move it. They realize what's going on. And so eventually they're like trying to like hold this thing in place while this poor bastard's getting electrocuted, and it kind of slips off axis a little bit. And that's why you see that blood kind of go sideways, because if you look at the end, it kind of takes like a left-hand turn towards the door, and you see it kind of rolling off the ceiling, which actually makes for a really cool effect. I mean, they were really lucky because they had like one shot at this whole thing, and that blood come pouring out, and it just, it went spectacularly well. And I guess there, was no real damage to anybody, including the poor bastard that got electrocuted. But I thought it was really cool the way that they did that, and it was just like a happy accident at the end where they kind of lost control of the room and the blood kind of took a sideways turn, but it made the camera effect even cooler, I thought.
Gotcha. How about you, Joey? Any other comments on how they shot that?
I don't know, but somebody got sued over getting electrocuted, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Safety first. I think it put Johnny Depp on the map I don't know if we would have seen him in 21 Jump Street if he didn't get his name out there with this movie. I think this was a smart move for him. I'm glad he did it.
It's kind of a fluky thing too, because Johnny Depp originally was trying to be a musician, and he was playing in a band and stuff, and he got married, I guess, pretty young to this. I can't remember the woman's name now. And then,
however that one ended, it wasn't as bad as Amber Turd.
Well, yeah, but so she divorces him and starts going out with a very young Nicolas Cage, who ends up meeting Johnny Depp through her. Thinks Johnny Depp's kind of cool, and he's like, "Hey, man, you should come make movies with me." And so he kind of like coaxed him into doing this, and Johnny Depp did it and was not confident at all when he did this. Very, very shy, because this is not the boisterous, Jack Sparrow that we're going to know years later. This is still quiet, reserved, like 21 Jump Street. Johnny Depp with not a lot of range yet and stuff, but I guess
crybaby.
Yeah, and he got, I think he only got paid like $1,200 to do this film or whatever. And then in the meantime, his band broke up because he was gone so long while they filmed it. And then he's kind of like, well, I guess I have to just give this movie thing a try because I don't have a band to be in anymore. And that's kind of how his whole career started, was just a fluke between marrying this woman who ended up dating Nicolas Cage, who kind of liked him, and they hung out, and, they're kind of part of that 80s, brat pack back in the day. And, just kind of a lucky break for him, I guess, in the long run. And then he just kind of kept getting parts from there. But, the character that we see here is the same guy that we're going to see in 21 Jump Street, just kind of quiet, reserved, kind of shy and stuff, not real confident. It isn't going to be years later that we're going to get, kooky, crazy Johnny Depp that's, larger than life. And, he is kind of to this, which I think it's kind of how Robert Downey Jr. became, later on. I mean, he became Iron Man, Johnny Depp's going to become Jack Sparrow. That's who these guys are, they become synonymous with these characters. So.
All right, I'm going to have to give you a point for pointing out Robert Downey Jr., a.k.a. Iron Man.
He has nothing to do with this 80s movie.
He doesn't.
Just like
comic book
80% of all other 80s movies, but not this one.
The points really don't count, all right? Like Drew Carey, I'm just throwing points left and right. All right.
But this wouldn't be Johnny Depp's last Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
No.
For the third time today, I will say Freddy's Dead. This time the full title, The Final Nightmare, where he plays Guy on TV. And his name in the credits is Oprah Noodle Mantra.
Speaking of guys on TV, did you guys check out... Now, Joey did point it out earlier when he was sharing his screen, but did you guys check out what was on the television screen while Nancy was trying not to fall asleep?
I didn't know what the fuck it was when I was a kid. I was like, that movie looks scary. What the fuck's that? Well, it was.
And, of course, that was The Evil Dead.
The Evil Dead.
In turn is, the Sam Raimi movie that also had a Wes Craven movie in it, which was The Hills Have Eyes.
They tore the poster because they wanted to say, look how scary our movie is. We're sending a message because we're going to tear this poster in half and put it in the basement of this cabin, and it makes no sense. And so Wes Craven's like, screw you, I'm going to give you money to put parts of your movie in my movie to show that my movie's scarier than your movie. Yeah, and that makes sense. I'm going to edit together some random clips of Evil Dead and throw it in there.
You thought a tree raping woman was hot? Wait till you see me put claws up between girls' legs in the bathtub.
We're going to have a guy's tongue come out of the phone.
Weirdly enough, I guess that Heather Langenkemp liked that prop so much that she asked if she could keep it, and which you're like, sure, you're kind of weird, but yeah, here you go. So
I know what to do with this.
Yes, I really like this prop. I'd like to take it home, please.
I'm going to attach this to my Hitachi magic wand massager.
It's because she grew up in the Finger Lakes, and it just reminded her of her childhood.
Ah.
I don't know.
See, the Finger Lakes are like, well, first, you're just like one or two fingers, and then by the end, you'll say, well, how about all five?
Lakes. Yes. Anyway.
That prop was probably just as cool as, I don't know, the staircase. I thought Yeah, that staircase was pretty cool too. That they
Yeah,
did.
was that marshmallow cream?
I think it was like oatmeal and glue or something. But it was
looks
a cool
like
effect.
marshmallow. I don't remember. It was a fucking mess, and I don't know. I think that part was based on some weird dream Wes had, and it goes to show that not all weird things that happen in a dream translate to a good movie.
True.
That took me out of it even as a kid. I'm like, why are they marshmallow steps?
So I thought it was kind of a cool effect. I mean, I thought it was pretty well executed and done.
It was neat. It reminded me of the Ghostbusters, which came out the same year. Not necessarily the same month, but yeah, definitely the same
Stay
year.
Puft Marshmallow Steps?
Yes. Well, anyway, back to the story. So Nancy,
That's bad carpentry, by the way. It's terrible. If you step on your steps and you pull out your fucking foot and it's covered in marshmallow cream,
that means the foam.
They violated your home warranty.
It's broken down.
You might want to call your contractor back up. Anyway, so
we were trying to save money by filling the steps with marshmallow.
So Nancy's at home. She's basically locked in her house, and she looks out the window, and she manages to get in contact with her dad, and tells her dad, "Hey, Dad, I'm gonna try to get this guy. I need you to come over in the next 20 minutes to help save me." And of course, John Saxon, aka the guy from Enter the Dragon, basically pawns it off to another officer, Officer Don. So Nancy basically asks Don across the street to who's investigating Glenn's murder, to break into her house in 20 minutes. She rigs her house with booby traps, much like Kevin from Home Alone. And she manages to successfully lure Kruger out of her nightmare and into the real world, where she uses the booby traps that allows her to light him on fire and lock him in the basement. Now, I can't help but feel sorry for Fred, because he was already burned in real life, and now here he is getting burnt again.
He freaked out about it.
What's that?
He freaked out about it. He's like, no.
And of course, watching the movie, you can see the classic. Evidently, the stuntman is wearing a flame retardant suit, and he's probably got that stuff all over him. So you can kind of see Freddy's face is almost, the mask's like almost falling off the stunt double.
Yeah, he looked like type 2 diabetes Freddy. It's like, hey,
Right.
Why did Freddy get fat as fuck all of a sudden? That's because the man didn't want to burn under the real fire.
Yeah, and of course, Nancy manages to signal her cop dad to come over, and they break down the door, and they discover that Kruger is escaped the basement, manages to leave flaming fire prints across the across the living room floor, up the stairs that they were just at.
S'mores.
Yeah, s'more stairs, and leading up to Nancy's mom's bedroom. At which point we see that Freddy Krueger is now jumped on top of Nancy's mom, and she is now a burnt corpse as it suddenly gets pulled into the mattress, into the dream world.
He didn't even say anything like that. Like, hey, hot stuff. We weren't to that Freddy yet. We weren't to the one-liners.
No,
Right.
I was kind of disappointed in that too, because that's how I kind of remembered Freddy being. So I must have seen one or two of the other ones, and yeah, I guess he doesn't really get lippy until he starts in the second one. In fact, he doesn't have a lot of screen time. Was it like 7 minutes total maybe during this movie? Like, there's not a lot of screen time for Freddy if you think about it.
Yeah, he definitely gets he gets Bruced. Bruce the shark from Jaws in this movie. I think that's so he can see scarier. Plus, I think it's also so they don't really reveal too much of his makeup, because it wasn't as good in this episode. Movie. Yeah, the makeup looks kind of half-assed through part of the movie, and so
compared to the later films, I would say particularly 2, the makeup, in my opinion, is the best in part 2. The witch nose and everything.
Gotcha. So Kruger basically disappears again with Nancy's mom, and everything just seems to like evaporate. And it's kind of neat that the cop's like, oh, well, everything's gone now. My ex-wife is now gone.
No more alimony for me.
Right. And so he like leaves the room, and I'm like, wow, that seems like a very poor reaction. I'd be like trying to search the entire, tearing the bed mattress apart, looking underneath the bed. What is John Saxon thinking?
I think he's going to look for a bottle. I know she's got one around here somewhere. I don't know what I just seen, but I'm going to drink my way through this.
What about you, Joey? What other thoughts do you have on this whole sequence of Nancy's final showdown with Kruger?
Well, people are constantly saying, the guy in Saw is really Kevin McAllister grown up, but Nancy was Kevin McAllister before Home Alone. I love the way she rigged up the house. That's kind of like fun. Is it unrealistic? Could she have not pulled it off? Well, I think it's slightly more realistic than Kevin from Home Alone, but they're cool. I thought it was fun that she booby trapped the house. I think that's a fun part of the movie, so I didn't mind it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but when does she turn into this MacGyver? Out of nowhere, and she's sitting down with her little anarchist cookbook and figuring out how to like load light bulbs. You just said it. I know.
Anarchic cookbook. Was that not a real publication?
Oh yeah, it was a real publication for sure. But where did this girl get it? Like out of nowhere, all of a sudden she's
apparently the public library.
No, I'm pretty sure that's not a book that you can find at your public library. I'm positive of that.
Especially at 10 o'clock at night,
It's one of those books we've all heard about, but nobody's actually ever seen before.
It would make more sense if it belonged to Rod.
But maybe because her dad was
he's a
cop
degenerate
and he was into weird things like that. I don't know. And it was left over because, obviously the shotgun shells are left over from her dad living there or something. But I just I'm watching. I'm like, how the hell is this girl doing? And I see that little book. I'm like, what is it? The anarchist cookbook she's working with down there?
She was actually you already explained it. She was actually watching MacGyver. It was around that time.
And that's true too. I guess maybe there was that going on. And her mom's sleeping through this. Don't get me wrong. I know she's an alcoholic, but still, my good God, she's screwing things into the wall and doing all kinds of crazy crap. It was still fun. You're right. It was absolutely fun. There's no doubt about it. But it was just such a weird thing, and then she's even doing like the A-Team thing where she strings the, and they kind of almost did the 80s, the A-Team montage. She's filling up the light bulb and she's running that little tripwire and it's all taut. And she puts her fingers and does the little piano, doing, make sure it's nice and tight and taunt and everything. And it was kind of
we need
funny.
To show that montage and actually play that.
And then she actually goes to sleep because she realizes, now she's it. Like, the last of them, Glenn, has fallen. And she's like, Dad, you got to come get me. He's like, yeah, baby, you just get some sleep. Like, okay, Dad, you going to come get me? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, girl, can you not pick up that your dad doesn't believe a damn word you're saying? Like, even though he's just went over to the house across the street and has seen this kid's, room that obviously somebody brought a ninja in and just cut it loose without the top and just blew your boyfriend all over the room with. But, so then she wakes up or goes to sleep, manages to pull Freddie out of the dream. Then she thinks she's crazy because she's like, oh no, it didn't happen. And he is there. And so she starts like baiting him, like, again, Kevin McAllister, like, come on, Freddie, come through the door, and stuff. And the sledgehammer comes down and, almost hits him in the jewels, pisses him off. He goes falling down the staircase and everything. And I want to back it up before that. I like when she goes to sleep and she gets up and walks around the house, opens up the staircase, goes down to the basement, opens up some magical new door, goes to the sub basement, takes the little twisty tornado staircase down to the sub basement, and then down the ladder to the sub basement into like this pipe room or whatever. It's just like, right. How many basements does this girl have?
I've had weird dreams where I'm in a real place, but the architecture's fucked.
I know.
Like I turn around and like, oh, I don't remember this being back here.
It's just like, so goofy.
My brain's fucking with me.
It was just so goofy. But yeah, so then they're running around and she's just running through all the different traps and stuff. And then finally lures him down to the basement. And she's like, hey, Freddie, and tosses stuff. He's like, oh, he all freaks out and stuff, sets him on fire. Now, I will say that was really cool, too. I mean, and up to that point, that was the longest fire scene ever filmed. I mean, that guy, he was actually supposed to just chase her up the staircase And then she was supposed to go through the door and hit him with the door, and he was supposed to fall down. It was his idea to like actually go back down the staircase, fall down, and then start to climb it up again before he kind of falls over. So, kudos to that stunt guy, because he really, really, really brought it for that scene.
Yeah.
And,
He was wearing enough padding.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He was completely safe.
Yeah, he definitely looked like he had a little bloat on him, but still, I mean, it was pretty impressive, and it was very long. I mean, I don't know if I'd want to be on fire that long, but kudos, it was very, very cool. And then, but the thing is then she's like trying to get everybody's attention, and she's breaking windows and screaming, screaming out of others and stuff like, "Go get my dad!" And that cop's just like, I wonder if I should go tell her dad about this. And then there's other people that are standing just a little off of him, and they're just still looking at the other house. They're not paying attention to this girl freaking out and screaming out, because obviously they filmed it 2 different times. But it's like, don't you think those people turn around like, what's going on over there? There's smoke billowing out of the windows. There's glass getting shattered. She's screaming bloody murder, and nobody's paying attention except for the one cop. And he's like, well, I guess I should go tell her dad about that right after I finish my sweet tea. He had to be from the South. That's all I'm going to say. Right after I finish my sweet tea. But it's just...
It was a little odd. It was definitely a hole in the plot there.
Yeah. And then they come over like the Keystone Cops, like a Benny Hill Keystone Cops thing. Here, get the door down. And stuff. And then they're like, what's going on here? The whole place is smoky. Glass is broken. There's fire everywhere. There's fire footprints. They get upstairs and, and then, she's like, I got him, Dad, I got him. And he comes in the room and you clearly can see Freddie on top of the mother, who I'm sure burst into flames and charred out like that, because she was so, she was probably 10,000 proof with as much alcohol as she drank, that she probably instantaneously just char babied instantly. So, and then they just watch her kind of sink in the depths of this weird blue light and then disappear. I was like, well, that's the strangest thing I've ever seen, but sure. And he's just like, Although I would have enjoyed seeing him do a little fist bump, like, wow, Moni, that would have been awesome. But and then he just looks at her. She's like, I'll be okay, Dad. You just go ahead. He's like, okay. And he kind of walks out. The guy's like, everything okay? He's like, yeah, just close the door. You don't want to come in here. You don't want none of this. So, deputy, just walk away. And then she's just standing in that room. You might
fall into the big blue void that was my ex-wife's bed.
Yeah, we're just going to leave that for the daughter in case I'm out of alimony. I might be out of child support here too. Let's see if I get a twofer or whatever. So I don't know, but it's just such a kind of a weird thing. The whole scene, between him and her after they watch the mother turn into jerky and then descend into go into the light. So
it would have made more sense if it was just he pulls back after he throws the thing on, and then he pulls back and she's just jerky. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, that's why the house was smoking, is because your wife was, smoking in bed with vodka or Everclear.
Right.
And then that explains it away.
Yeah. But she's completely clothed though. So even if the body hadn't sunk, it's like she's completely charred, but the clothes are perfectly intact. Explain that one out.
I said, I would have just had everything be charred in the bed.
Yeah. Well, of course, after all that happens, Nancy's now by herself in the in her mom's bedroom, and we see this cool effect of Freddie rising up out of the bed through the bed sheet, and you can kind of see the sheet starting to pool with blood on top because of just his face being so badly burnt. And of course, that's when Nancy realizes that Freddie's power is fueled by the victim's fear, which I don't get how she learned that. At no point did we learn any of that information, and suddenly she realizes, oh, hey, because of my fear, that's what's powering you. So she calmly turns her back to him, and Freddie Kruger just suddenly evaporates in a classic 80s sparkle effect. Probably the neatest but yet stupidest effect in the movie.
It could have used a star wipe, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then she steps out of the door, and suddenly it's the daytime, and she steps out into the morning fog where all her friends and her mother are still alive. And she gets into Glenn's convertible to go to school when the top suddenly comes down in the color of green and red stripes, just like Freddie's sweater. and locking them in the car. The car speeds down the street, and Marge waves with them goodbye in what looks like a drunken kind of stupor of a vacant look. Now, of course, she did mention this. This is probably a big point that it's a dream, because she's like, well, I don't feel like drinking anymore. No alcoholic in their entire life will ever utter those words. And of course, we then see the car speed off. There's 3 girls in white dresses playing jump rope, chanting the Kruger nursery rhyme, while Marge, in probably one of the oddest effects, gets pulled back in through the smallest door window. I mean, the human body cannot fit through that. And she's pulled through like a rubber dummy through the window.
She was so blow up down. She was so blow up down.
I'm watching this in slow motion while you're talking about it.
It probably the worst. Okay, it's probably the second worst effect in the movie was her just getting pulled through that window, and I'm like,
what's the first worst effect?
The sparkle.
Oh no! It was when he pretends to be her friend in the dream, and he's wearing like a rubber mask over his face, and he's like, oh, and then he pulls it away. I forgot about that completely.
No, I'm gonna go with the sparkle.
He was chasing. Yeah, it wasn't the skull face thing at the beginning. That was cool. It was this weird rubber face scene that I forgot about.
I'm going with the blue sparkle. I think that was jankier.
Yeah, I'm.
Blue's my favorite color.
Blue sparkles.
Me over.
The blue sparkles. I mean, it was so bad.
Do you think it would have been better if she would have gotten the glow like Bruce Leroy in The Last Dragon and fucked him up? Or better yet, if Bruce Lee never died, he would have played Sergeant Lee, and then he would have bust in and fucked Freddie up, and there wouldn't have been any sequels.
I think what they should have done is that she figures out, however, that she's the one giving him his power, which I agree is a little weird, as Matt says. How does she all of a sudden figure this out? But she does. So let's go with that. It's a given. It's it's a law that we all must accept. It just is what it is. I think maybe she should have turned, and I think he's like, I'm gonna gut you like a fish or something. And he starts swiping at her, but it just keeps going through her. And each time he kind of tries to attack her, maybe he just keeps fading away. That might have been a better than just turning into blue pixie dust. Maybe that would have probably been a little better. And then, then it makes sense that when she turns around, I did enjoy that she walks through the door and she walks out into the sunlight, which leads us, to the way it's just super bright. And the mom's like, oh, I don't want to drink right there. They're in a dream still or something. And this is where I think Wes Craven is not happy, because this is not the ending that he wanted. A happy ending in this, because I think this was a one and done movie for him originally. And he wanted to have a happy one where she, basically she awakes, discovers that, this was all an elaborate nightmare, nothing happened. And the movie basically ends. All her friends are back and it's all good to go. She's defeated Freddie and that's over. And I guess Robert Shea, who was one of the producers, was like, no, we need to set this up for a sequel. So we need to have it reveal itself that it is a nightmare. And he wanted it so that when they get into the car, they realize that Freddie's driving the car and he traps them all in there and drives away and sets it up for the sequel. And so they came up to a compromise where it's they kind of get the happy ending and they all get in the car, but then the thing flies over and you realize the car is Freddie, kind of, because it's got, the red and green, sweater pattern on it. And the kids all freak out or whatever, which, they do because that thing comes down way faster. So that's kind of a real reaction, which I thought was kind of cool. And then they drive away and the mom's like, oh, everything's good. And then, you're like, what the hell, what's going on? Because how does Freddie become a car? And you realize that she still never really woke up or whatever. And then there's that weird, again, that pulls the mom through the window, which is just that's the dumbest shit I've ever seen. I mean, I guess it's, sure, why not? I mean, let's just throw in it's a dream sequence that weird things happen. I think it might have been an afterthought. And they're like, just go get one of those cheap blow up doll things and we'll just whip it through the window or whatever. I mean, if they'd have tried to spend just a little bit more money and tried to make it look a little better, it might have, might have paid off more, but it's just really cheap looking.
It wasn't a blow up doll. I've watched it enough on slow motion that it's not a blow up doll, but it is very cheap. The faces looks really bad.
Right. Then it's probably
if you watch it quick enough, it kind of half works. But you got to think it had to be light because it is a real person's arm just yanking it through as fast as they can.
Right.
Right.
So I imagine there was multiple takes on that. So like they wanted it to be like an unrealistic dreamlike death. She's already kind of died once. And I get what they were trying to do, but I think they accidentally made it funny. But I remember watching this. My friend had bought it, I think, at that point. And we were just in his room and just watching it on his TV VCR over and over again. Watch her get pulled through the fucking window and just laughing like just giggling like schoolgirls.
Yeah,
because it was funny.
I guess if you're 12 or high, it's probably hilarious.
I wasn't high. I think we were 14.
Okay, well, you're in the demographic of, yeah, I can see where, especially if you're watching it late at night, it's like 2 a.m. and you're hopped up on Little Debbie's and Coke. Yeah, it's probably pretty entertaining.
Cola, you mean Coca-Cola?
Well,
right?
it's the 80s. Either way, you pick your poison.
By the way, I've never seen cocaine.
Well,
I've
good
seen
for you,
crack.
Joey. Joey, good for you.
I've never seen powdered cocaine in my life.
That's Joey, because you were always smart to say, just say no.
Yeah,
that's right. Thanks, Nancy Reagan. And for the record, when I did see crack, it was the police were showing it to me. It was like a prop.
Was it
So
Safety
this
Pup?
is crack cocaine.
When Safety Pup came to your school, did you I'm not going to look at cocaine because I'm a good boy?
There's a big long story behind it. No, it was like $20,000 worth of crack, and I held it in my hand. I go, man, I'm in the wrong business, and I got the ugliest look from that cop in the fucking world. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are offended at all by what Joey has said, feel free to write the show at badreviewpodcast@gmail.com.
How can I make crack? It's like, shit. I'm ready to sell this stuff.
All right, gentlemen.
Please
So
do not
here we
send
are.
Joey your Zyrtec D or anything like that he may make illicit drugs out of.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen. So here we are. We're at the end of the movie. Final thoughts before we segue into our death clock. Thoughts on the end of the movie. Thoughts on the movie in general. I'll turn it over to you first, Tim.
Again, I like the movie. Seeing it now, it had less of an impact on me this time around. It's a little dated, and as you get older, you see the chinks in the story armor. You know what I mean? Like some of the plot points, you see them for what they are. They're it could have been tightened up, could have been executed a little bit better. But overall, it's a great concept. It's a good story. It's got an iconic character that I think gets better probably with many of the sequels that come after this. I'm sure there's some stinkers too, and Joey could probably tell us which ones are the good ones and which ones are the bad ones. But overall, yeah, I mean, it's still a fun movie. It's a great concept. Not overly gory. I mean, there's actually, if you think about it, there's technically only 3 deaths. I mean, that's it. I mean, really, and the use is great to great effect. Less is more. I mean, again, I think Freddie's got about 7 minutes worth of screen time, but it has a great impact. What you do see has a great impact on it. And I think what makes it the most relatable is that everybody's had nightmares, especially really scary ones. So, you having experienced that tear in your own life, coupled into a movie format of a reoccurring dream, which I think a lot of people have had too, or one of those dreams that you wake up and you go back to sleep and you just keep having it. You can't get it out of your head. Like it helps heighten the impact of this movie's premise. So I think it's really, really well done, really well thought out.
Thank you for touching on that, because the premise of the movie, multiple premises of the movie, come from real life. The first being of which, young little boy Wes Craven, was looking out the window of his home or his apartment, wherever the hell he was living when he was a kid. And there was a little noise outside, and there was probably some drunk out there, and he looked really scary, this old drunk. And he may have been wearing clothes similar to what was dreamed up for this movie. And it really scared the hell out of him. And then eventually, the man saw that little Wes was looking at him in the window. And he kind of fucked with him a little bit and stared at him and scared him. And so that's kind of how we first see Freddy in this movie. Like, he's down this long alleyway. He's on the street walking, in Tina's dream, and he's just far away and he's scary. The next one was an article that Wes read about some kid in another country who was terrified to fall asleep. And he convinced himself that he was going to die if he fell asleep and he had this terrible nightmare again. And so what he did was, they like found he was literally like making coffee in his room or some shit. And he was doing everything he could to like try to stay up at night. And finally, they took all the devices away from him that he was using to stay awake, and he fell asleep. And then he woke up with such a fright, screaming, he had a heart attack and died. So, like, if they would have talked about that, if she would have went and saw a psychiatrist that said, you're making yourself sick with worry. I realize you're having these nightmares and you think it's real, but, the mind has an effect on the body. And it's like, it's affecting your physical health because you're taking this so seriously. You need to tell yourself it's not real. If you tell yourself it's not real and you breathe and do these things I'm telling you, it's like your health's going to improve. And then that could have given Nancy the idea. It's like, oh, well, if I think it's real, then it's real. If I don't think it's real, then it's not real. It's like if I fear Freddie, he has power over me. If I don't fear him, I take his power away. And then you could have kind of better explained how she figured out how to fuck with Freddie. This kind of goes on even through Freddie versus Jason. It's like he needs Jason to go kill some kids so they're scared again, and they're talking about Freddie because otherwise he's powerless to kill them in their dreams. All he can do is spook them. So this comes back around throughout the series. It's like, but at the same time, like they got to keep having sequels. So it's like nobody can stop, not being afraid of him, and he will fucking kill you. I like the movies. They're cheese fests. Can I give my verdict?
For the Deathclock?
Yes.
Just hold that thought.
I'm gonna put a pin in it.
All right, cool.
As Matt says.
Yeah. So yeah, my final thoughts on the film before we segue into the Deathclock is, I do enjoy this movie to a certain point. Horror is not my big thing. I'm not a big horror fan, but I do have to tip my cap to Wes Craven on this movie because it has a lot of the classic 80s tropes and a lot of those looking through it now in nostalgic glasses, I do enjoy some of the stuff. But yeah, there's some holes in the plot. There's some story points that I tend to kind of point my finger at and say what. But it's pretty good. I kind of enjoyed it. So with that being said, Joey, I'll turn it over to you now. In the aspect of everything with our Deathclock, is it worth taking the 1 hour and 31 minutes off to watch this film, A Nightmare on Elm Street?
I think I'm going to surprise you. I've been shitting on this movie for well over an hour. But I've been shitting on it with fondness. And we'll come back to that poopy allegory after. Stay tuned. Anyhow, it's a cheese fest. But I like cheese. And this movie is, I think some of it's unintentionally cheesy. I think it just came off a certain way. And the sequels run with it. The second one doesn't. It's got some cheesiness too, but it's fucking scary. Third one, fourth one, fifth one, sixth one. Cheese, cheese, cheese. And I like cheese. So I like the series. I like this movie. I love Robert Englund. I think that nobody else can do Freddie like he does it. I mean, he thought about the body language. He's like, this glove's my weapon. I'm going to kind of hold it off to the side like I'm an evil gunman and I'm about to draw. So he has this swagger with the way he walks, the way he kind of holds the glove when he's not even doing anything with it. I can't get enough Freddie. I love Freddie Kruger. I love the video game. I love for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Yeah, back when we had rated R video games that were meant for kids.
Right.
I loved my friend's little talking Freddy doll, where you pulled the string, and then I realized later, like, it was always going too fast. If you slow it down and you control the string as it goes in, it does sound like Robert Englund. Instead of like, hey, let's be friends. It's like, hey, let's be friends. And you're like, holy shit, that sounded like...
Hey, I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
Yes, that's what it said to children in the doll. But this was the height of let's market horror to kids. They had child-sized Freddy masks. They had plastic finger, safe for children Freddy gloves. That's still the lowest end one you can get. It's a piece of shit.
Well, it's like Yogurt said from Spaceballs: merchandising.
They had little plastic Freddy heads that had like fucking gum or candy in them. They had trading cards. Because adult kids who are old enough to go to a rated R movie want to fucking get trading cards and stickers, right? I'm a child.
So if you had extra trading cards or stickers, send them to Joey because his collection's incomplete.
That's right. I will fucking take your Nightmare on Elm Street trading cards and I will treat them with respect. And I will smell them. Try to get a whiff of the gum. I love this stuff. It was marketed to me as a kid. I love it as an adult. I realize that it's ridiculous, and that's part of the reason why I love it. And my final thoughts in the movie also are, I could never jump rope like those girls, and I still can't.
Gotcha.
I'm jealous.
Well, Joey, since you mentioned the other films and how cheesy they are, which one do you like the most?
I think I already said that. Part 2.
Part 2? Okay.
I like Part 2, and I don't think I realized the homosexual overtones when I was watching it as a child. But it's really fucking obvious as an adult. There's a whole documentary about it. That's pretty good too. And sad. I recommend that one. I think Scream Queen. I think it's called Scream Queen. It's probably streaming somewhere, and it's excellent. So watch Nightmare on Elm Street, then watch Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, and then watch Scream Queen.
All right. Well, then I'll turn it over to Tim. Tim, is this movie worth taking an hour and 31 minutes off your death clock?
Yeah, I'm going to say it's worth taking time off your death clock. It's got a great premise. I mean, it's a very original story premise. I mean, is there a lot of plot holes in this? Yeah, there are quite a few. And is there some parts that are, as Joey likes to call it, a cheese fest? Sure. I mean, some of that is because this movie was shot on a very low budget and forced to be shot very quickly. I mean, New Line Cinema was running out of money. There's a reason why they say, New Line Cinema is the house that Freddie built, because if this movie hadn't made it, there wouldn't have been a New Line Cinema after that. But it's, considering that they had to make a little bit of money go a long way, they made a really good movie with it, I thought, and
$1.8 million turned into $57.1 million.
Yeah, that's a pretty good return on your investment. I mean, yeah, for sure. And it spawned, it spawned merchandising. I don't know. Is there any other franchise that has been merchandised like this? I mean, this is like the Star Wars of horror.
Friday the 13th is equally merched out now. I would say that this had more merch geared toward kids in the 80s, but Friday the 13th, they're even keel now.
And it got more play. I mean, it got movie after movie. It got crossovers. It got a TV series. I mean, my God, if you'd told me they're going to make a TV series out of this, I'd have laughed. But they did. They figured out how to do it. Turned Robert Englund into a star. Launched Johnny Depp's career. I mean, more or less. I mean, so yeah, it's a really good film. And like I said, I'm not big into horror films, but I can appreciate a really, really good story. And sometimes some of these series are like a franchise. Usually the first one's got a great concept, and then after that, they're just figuring out ways to like try to cash in, and it becomes more hack and slash and less good story. I feel like Hellraisers, even though the first one's kind of disturbing, kind of a good premise, good plot. Same thing with the original, Halloween. Same thing with, the original, Friday the 13th. This one too. I mean, it even Saw. It had a good, a good premise, good storyline. I mean, there's varying degrees of gore in these, but I feel like afterwards they just, again, gore starts to outpace a good story, and that's where I fall off after that, because if it doesn't have an intriguing story or a good premise or some kind of spook factor to it, I'm done. I'm not going to watch it. So this is definitely one that has a good story, and even though it can be a little bit on the cheese end of things, very fun to watch and very enjoyable. So definitely worth an hour and a half of your time.
Nice. Well, it's actually going to be a three-peat here as well, folks, because I agree. I think it is worth taking time off your death clock to watch this movie, but mostly because I feel like this movie is like a cinematic touchstone for slasher genres. This is kind of like Halloween or Friday the 13th. This is what moved the slasher flicks towards the film industry. 1978 we had Halloween, and then in 1982 we had Friday the 13th, and they kind of started off as this could be an average person who kind of just loses mentality and kills a bunch of kids. Now we've kind of stepped from that thought process to something more supernatural, and I think it's almost like it one-ups the classic slasher trope. We move beyond the babysitter getting cut up or the campers dying in a campground. Now it's more targeted towards kids' dreams, and it kind of changes the whole slasher dynamic. And every other movie after this just seems to be, hey, how can we push that envelope? We can get past that sticky part of the envelope into something more. And I think this kind of sets the tone for it. And I wouldn't, honestly, at this point, I think it would have been better if this would have been a standalone movie, because by itself, I think this is worth watching. Once you start getting into Freddy's sequels, even though Joey likes 2 and maybe some of the other stuff, I think it got a little too gobbledygook, too crazy with the Dream Child and the Dream Warriors. I think it went a little too beyond its initial premise. I think if it stuck with just the one film, it would have been solid gold all the way through. Diminishing returns on sequels, I feel towards the franchise, but by itself, this is definitely worth watching, taking time off your death clock.
Fun fact: David Warner was originally cast to play Freddy, and you're like, "Who the fuck's David Warner?" Google him.
Oh,
you're gonna see his face. You're gonna be like, "Oh, that fucking guy." The scientist from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2: Secret of the Ooze. Yes, David Warner.
You mean the main bad guy from Tron?
You mean that guy from Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country who gets assassinated? Oh, goddamn Klingon's got 3 hearts and purple blood. I don't know how to. I could be killing him by doing CPR.
You just got the super bonus points tonight for bringing up Star Trek 6: The Undiscovered Country.
That was 6?
That was 6.
Well, that 5 was the was 5. 5 was the Spock's brother thing, right?
Yes, and he was in that one too. He played he plays an ambassador. Come on, man! It's
he
Trek.
Just wasn't in different episodes of Next Generation. He's like, I'm in multiple Star Trek motion pictures.
Yes,
as different aliens.
He is. Yeah, he played an ambassador, a U.S. ambassador on a planet without makeup, and then he shows up as the Klingon Chancellor in the Undiscovered Country.
What was he in The Omen?
I think he was one of the priests.
Okay. Time After Time. I remember him in Time After Time.
Yeah, he played Jack the Ripper.
He was Jack the Ripper. Yeah. Wasn't it Sherlock Holmes in Time Travel and Time After Time versus Jack the Ripper?
It was H.G.
Wells versus Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
By the way, allegedly they've proven that Jack the Ripper was this Polish guy. Allegedly, very recently.
You mean he wasn't a doctor that was working for the Crown that secretly was killing?
No, but he did end up in an insane asylum.
Gotcha. Yeah, so that was our tangent off of David
Who
Weber.
else was going to play Freddy before we? Who was just roughly like a little bit of an interview? Didn't get very far into it before Wes realized what kind of Freddy he wanted. Who played a horror icon and was supposed to go up against Robert Englund?
Scary Terry.
Well,
Is it?
but he didn't.
Kane Hooper.
Kane Hodder.
Okay.
The man who's played Jason more than anyone else and very much looked forward to, working with Robert, his convention buddy, on Freddy vs. Jason. He was interviewed as a potential person to play Freddy Krueger.
Nice. All right, folks. Well, that's been A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now here we are at mail call. Again, another episode, no mail. So, folks, if you like what you hear, let us know. Email the show. We'd love to hear from you. If you don't like the show, if what we've said offends you or has triggered you in some way, feel free to email Joey at mamreviewpodcast@gmail.com. He'll be happy to reply to your hate mail. If you have an idea for an episode for us, feel free to write in and let us know. So, gentlemen, that leads us to, what are you watching? Other than getting scared and watching some bad 80s teens getting hacked up by a guy wearing a glove, what else are you watching? Tim, what's on the docket tonight?
I have recently moved on to the TV series The Blacklist. It's got James Spader in it. I don't know if you've ever seen this. It's basically about an ex-government agent turned criminal who ends up on the FBI's most wanted list, top 10 most wanted list for years. And then one day he walks into their headquarters and surrenders himself. They're ready to throw the book at him and throw him in a deep hole and make him disappear. When he says, look, I have come. I want to help you guys. I have this list of horrible, horrible mobsters and spies and international terrorists that I'd like to see eliminated. But my conditions are that you're going to let me go. I get to continue on with my endeavors. And I will only speak to one agent, this new profiler you have named Elizabeth Keene. And that kind of goes from there. And it's a mesmerizing TV show. James Spader does a fantastic job in this. And it's one of those TV shows you start watching it and it's like crack. You just like, okay, one more episode, just one more episode. Like you just want to keep watching. Like his performance in this is fantastic. It's riveting. It's got great casework going on in it. And I don't know. It's TV crack to me right now. And I was super happy when I found it. I was even more happy when I discovered there are 10 seasons. It's now over, but there's 10 seasons. So I'm going to be on a crack bender for quite a while watching this show. So this is what you're probably going to hear from me on a pretty steady basis. Still watching The Blacklist.
It's a white space for me, but I've seen on Netflix, when you flip through Netflix, it's got the little like trailers and stuff plays for it. I've seen it pop up every once in a while, and I've been wanting to watch it because I like James Spader. He's one of those 80s actors that kind of like sticks with you, and he, at one point it seems like he morphed from being the zany, James Spader from like your 80s comedies to more this like
he was
intellectually.
Zany? I don't remember ever being zany. I was thinking him as like Daniel from Stargate. That's what I was thinking him as. Yeah, but
now he's kind of taking more of a darker twist with his characters. I mean, he did the voice of Ultron in Age of Ultron. But like when he shows up in the comedy TV series The Office, he's definitely more of a dark character, and I've kind of liked his slight twist. So
I haven't liked him in anything since playing Robert California in The Office. And I think rather than Ultron, I think he would have been a better voice of Garfield. I mean, really, that's how I felt like he was playing it. Like he was just so arrogant, and I don't know. I like James Spader, for the record.
I could see him playing.
Do more
playing
comedies.
Garfield.
The Blacklist does nothing for me.
No, I can't get enough of it, man. In fact, as soon as we're done, that's right where I'm going tonight.
All right. What about you, Joey? What does it for you? What are you watching right now?
I am still watching Severance. In fact, you guys are keeping me. We're recording on a Thursday, so you're keeping me from watching the latest episode of Severance right now. And then I'm also watching Invincible.
Nice.
Invincible's back for a third season, and I enjoy it. Trying to remember what I watched this weekend. Shit. Oh, I watched the 50th anniversary SNL special. It was way too fucking long, but oh my god, was it better than the 40th. The 40th anniversary special was just fucking... It was cringy, and not in a good way.
Oh, so this time they announced they were going to stop making it?
They made a joke that they said if it's up to the president, it's probably going to be the last, not just the 50th season, but the last season.
I'm pretty sure if it was up to all the people who don't watch it, they'd say the same thing. Like, that's still on? Oh, okay, sure, why not?
When it's good, it's good, and when it's bad, it's fucking bad. But no, I'm not going to shit on SNL. I think it's become an institution. I think Lorne Michaels does need to take a step back and enjoy what's left of his life. He's 80 I think he's 80 years old. Let me see. Lorne Michaels'
would be
age.
like in his 70s, because I thought
he's
he was
80
like
years old. He was born November 17th, 1944. So as we're recording this in February 2025, he's 80.
Okay.
So I think he needs to take a step back, and I think someone who's very familiar with the show and has, some years left on her, I think Tina Fey should take over. And I think she could elevate SNL back to some glory days and have a cast that it's like, oh, remember that cast? I think she could actually do it. So I love Saturday Night Live. I hope here's to 50 more years. Do I think it'll be around for 50 more years? I don't know if it's going to be around for like 50 more weeks. So, here's to season 51 when Lorne Michaels retires and Tina Fey takes over. That's my hope for the show.
That's your prediction for 2026, Tina Fey taking over.
That's on my that's not on my bingo card, because I don't think it's going to fucking happen. But I think that would be a wise choice.
Gotcha. All right. So if the FCC doesn't shut them down, we'll see if 2026, when we record our anniversary
I predict
episode,
that the FCC will become politicized.
Yeah. All right. So what I'm watching, so I'm still working my way slowly through Supernatural and How I Met Your Mother, but I started another series. It's actually I'm rewatching a series with my wife. She read the novels. It's Shadow and Bone, and I think I might have mentioned it last year, but it's a fun series. It's based off of young adult novels, but it's a fantasy series set in a world where there are these people who can harness magic, kind of like a mutant power. And there's this giant black void that's cut off a major part of the country. And so there's these two warring factions that's going on. It's a lot of intrigue, like Game of Thrones, but there's also like this magical mutant kind of aspect to everything. And it's a neat series. I recommend it for anyone who likes Lord of the Rings or Wheel of Time or anything in the fantasy genre. That would be right down their alley. But yeah, that's what I'm watching. All right. Well, gentlemen, since we don't have any guests tonight, that pretty much brings us to the end of the show. So I got nothing else. Anybody got any last minute bits or anything they want to mention before we close this thing down?
Nah.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify. The name of the documentary is Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street. Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street. And you can watch that on Pluto TV right now. I'm sure it's going to be streaming elsewhere in the future. Check out justwatch.com. It's like the telephone book, but if you remember what those things are, it's like the telephone book for streaming movies legally. So Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street, and check out justwatch.com to find out where you can watch it whenever the hell it is you're listening to me say this.
Nice. All right, gentlemen. Well, that's it for this evening. Tim, can you send us all to bed so we can drift off to Slumberland?
Or go watch The Blacklist. Yes. All right. Thanks for listening to Middle Age Movie Reviews Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our review of Nightmare on Elm Street. And we ask that you leave a rating or a comment. Come on, give us some love. Come on, hit that subscribe button. Send Matthew an email. Tell us how much Joey enrages you. I mean, hell, tell him how much I enrage you. Just something. Give us something. Give us some love. We know you're listening out there. We can see the algorithms. Hit like, subscribe.
Follow us on the usual social sites at MAM Reviews. Also check out our podcast website at middleagemoviereviewpodcast.blogspot.com. Have a comment or suggestion? Then email the show at mamreviewpodcast@gmail.com.
Until next time, try not to fall asleep. He just smeared shit on his face.
Yeah.
That's Danny Dookie Fingers. He's got turds for fingers, and he wiped them on your face too. And then his classmates caught him sticking his fingers and digging in his butt. And then he pulled them out, and he goes, and he smelled his fingers. And forever forward, he was Danny Dookie Fingers. Danny Dookie Fingers. Danny Dookie Fingers.